The Honourable Damien O'Connor.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. What a rubbish speech that was. Because twiddling your thumbs while Rome burns, and that member more than anyone else should know that what this government has done around tax has been outrageous. And I have to say, I went to a breakfast yesterday morning put on by the voluntary sector. Professor Robert Wade, a Kiwi actually, Professor of London School of Economics over there, he was hosted by the Honourable Joe Goodhue. And I've never seen a minister look so uncomfortable in my life. Because here was a national government minister hosting a person who basically stood up and said that the taxation regime in this country is outrageous and that it is the changes this national government has made. He didn't refer directly to the government. He was far more polite than that. I'm less polite. That is that the tax changes put in place by this government, and this bill does no more than tinker, I have to say, the tax changes have driven greater inequality up and down this country. And Professor Wade clearly laid out what that means for a society, and it's pretty sad. We have, as has been explained by previous speakers, a number of technical issues around holiday homes and boats and aircraft and other issues, some around livestock taxation that bring a bit more balance and a bit more certainty to changes. The bottom line is, when the national government came into power, it made two key changes to taxation. And I do not see a reverse of those changes in this bill here. Firstly, they lowered the tax for the most wealthy in this country. And secondly, they increased it for everyone else through GST. And people have probably forgotten that it was 12.5% in 2008, and the national government has now got it at 15%. It is a regressive tax because those on low income spend all of their income surviving. Those at the top end spend a small portion of their income. The rest they can spend in ways that don't attract GST. So not only did we have lower taxes for people at the top, we had regressive taxation GST increases at the bottom, and this bill tinkers because the people at the top, will have holiday homes and boats and aircraft, and they have been able to get a bit of a tax break on that, and people say that's outrageous, and the national government's very good moving on this area. Well, don't be sucked in. This is tinkering around the edges, and I'm sure many of the people at the top end who can have an aircraft and get a tax break on it, or have a holiday home and use it for something else, they'll find another way to get around it. But the core issues of taxation around the increase in GST, and in fact the other one that the government slipped in at the start of this month, of course, was an increase in petrol tax. 3 cents extra for every litre of petrol for every single Kiwi in this country. The people in the regions are outraged because they are paying basically for money to go to Auckland, and everyone who doesn't have access to public transport is having to pay a whole lot more. That is increase in taxation to people who can't avoid it, and decreasing taxation to those who can at the top end. That's been the consistent approach of the National Party in government. Mr Speaker, Robert Wade embarrassed the minister there yesterday, and so too should she have felt that way. He talked about actually a society, a just society, being one where distribution is done in the right way, not redistribution. And what we're effectively talking about here are changes in redistribution, tinkering at the edges, but not going to the core of the taxation system in this country. Mr Speaker, my colleagues have pointed out a number of other flaws. On balance, we'll support the bill. It makes, as I say, slight progress in areas, tidying up a bit here and a bit there, but it doesn't do anything to change the underlying unfairness of taxation in this country. Mr. Speaker, I raise another point that a colleague yesterday has brought up, and that in regard to IRD and their running of the whole taxation system, their ability to actually implement all these changes has come into serious question. And of course, their use of consultants is now being exposed. The government, in slashing and undermining public service capability, is increasingly bringing into the taxation system and every other area of government responsibility consultants at a far greater cost, but they're on a different appropriation line and sometimes hard to track down unless we ask the right questions. Mr. Speaker, the point being that if IRD is going to give effect to the changes here, it has to have the capability, and bringing in consultants to help it tidy up mistakes of the past or a lack of capability is not the best way forward. Mr. Speaker, if the IRD don't get on and improve the system, if the government doesn't fund them properly, not only their computer system will fall over, but so too will the basis of taxation in this country. So I hope they get on and deal with it. Mr. Speaker, I'll just finish on one other issue around livestock valuation, and I raised it, and I'd like to I guess reinforce a point I made earlier in the debate a couple of weeks ago, where the government seems to be and claims to be very good at livestock taxation. It's the issue of dead stock taxation that I want to refer to, and that is their management of trade of meat has not been good, because once again they have squeezed a government department, and they have no ability now to manage exports from this country into what are complex markets like China. And I fear that the ongoing determination by this government to drive down government capability is going to lead to some major problems, none more so than in the area of biosecurity once again, which will lead to, it may be a corny connection, but it's nonetheless an important one. That is, while I've sorted out livestock taxation, if biosecurity is breached and we ended up with a foot and mouth disease, then we'd have a hell of a lot of dead stock taxation and a major blow to our economy. So, Mr. Speaker, I just want to, in endorsing, I guess, and supporting the bill, remind the House that the government record in the area of taxation is outrageous. That is, it has made changes to give greater benefit to those at the top and impose greater burden to those at the bottom. That creates an unfair society, Mr. Speaker, and it's one that we don't support in any way at all.
I call the Honourable Minister, Dr. Nick